Don't tell him your name, Pike. Private Pike, Defence Secretary of the United Kingdom, is on his way to jail. He must now face charges under the Official Secrets Act, having betrayed our country's national security in plain sight, didn't have the guts to own up to it, forced the Prime Minister to hold an official inquiry which has found that our Defence Secretary leaked secrets from a meeting of the National Security Council, and the Prime Minister has sent him a letter ordering him to demit office, as she no longer has any confidence in him. So I have an idea. A prisoner swap. Let's open the gates of Belmarsh Prison, let Julian Assange out, and bang Gavin Williamson in the cell that Julian demits. Julian was, of course, a more honourable prisoner than Private Pike could ever be. After all, Private Pike leaked our secrets for personal advancement. And one could say, insofar as the wages of sin of being Prime Minister are greater than the Defence Secretary, for personal enrichment. Julian Assange told the truth to us, not for personal interest, not for personal enrichment, but for our enrichment, our interests. Julian Assange told the truth to us for us, and he accrued no conceivable advantage in so doing. Indeed, he has suffered mightily, bearing that cross of being a truth teller down all these years of incarceration, and I would argue torture, at the hands of the besieging British government and their American masters. Julian Assange bears the scars of being a truth teller. I have the privilege, as several do on this platform, of describing Julian Assange as my friend. I knew him when he was young and fresh and healthy and vibrant. And I have to tell you, when I saw him dragged out of that embassy, as Greg Sharkey said, in the manner befitting of a war criminal, I wept bitter tears for what had become of Julian Assange. And I met a lady today, she may be here, in a shopping mall in southwest London. An ordinary woman, not political at all, wasn't even sure if I was me. And she told me that she had watched what I'd said outside the grim prison walls of Belmarsh, and that she too had cried, and that she thought of Julian Assange every day. The ladies here, God bless you and thank you for coming. That she thought of Julian Assange every day. That's the impact of what has happened in the hearts of ordinary people who just know that there's something wrong here The man that told the truth about the war crimes is in prison, and the men that carried out the war crimes are counting their millions that they have made out of those crimes. It's just not right, is it? It's just not right. That lady knew that it's just not right. Dare I say, it's just not British. It's not fair. It's not just. And we demand that the British government cease and desist from their efforts to send Julian Assange to the torture chambers of the United States injustice system, because that's what they are planning to do. But there's many a slip twixt cup and lip, and there's more than one breaking story today. Let me tell you that in the last hour, it has been announced that there will be a parliamentary by-election in the Peterborough constituency, triggered by a recall petition. And so I can announce to you, you're the first to know, I will be a candidate in that by-election. And one of my candidate descriptions will be Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. In precisely the year, that a Russian gentleman, to quote my good friend Neil Clark, asked the question, what is to be done? A man called Hobbes wrote a book on imperialism. It has been in print since 1902. It is on every university reading list. It has been quoted approvingly by no less than Mr. Blair himself, by Gordon Brown, 2 British Prime Ministers. It has been quoted approvingly even in The Guardian. And yet, because 8 years ago, Jeremy Corbyn wrote a small comment, a blurb, see this film, read this book, which said, this is quite a good book actually, although it was controversial in parts at the time, no less than the London Times, formerly the paper of record, now another sewer of neocon propaganda, a cell actually of neocon propaganda, led with it on its front page that Jeremy Corbyn had endorsed a book which contained within its hundreds of thousands of words some casual racism, although they were only concerned about one particular casual racism. They weren't concerned that the author described the colonial peoples as lesser races. That's what he said in the book. Lesser race. They're not interested in that one, but his casual racism, an entirely unfounded casual racism about the banking and finance industries, has got Corbyn in the midst of another anti-Semitism storm. With local elections tomorrow, who'd have thunk it? The reason I mention it is this. We have tonight, I believe, certainly for the people watching around the world, slain the slander of Julian Assange. whether his activities in Sweden, his attitude towards cats, his personal hygiene. Is there any sentient being who hasn't smelt a rat that as soon as Jeremy Corbyn became a threat to the British establishment, it was discovered that he was an anti-Semite? As soon as Julian Assange was no longer the flavour of the month, all kinds of things were discovered about him. These hypocrites are not, I promise you, because I know them. I've known them for well over 30 years. These are not deluded, these journalists. They have not lost their way like some lost sheep. Journalism in what is laughingly called the mainstream media now is no more than a battalion of state power in Britain and in the United States. That's all that it is. And that is why the Duran, that is why 21st Century Wire, that is why the Canary, that is why the Squawk Box, that is why Wikileaks. Because nature abhors a vacuum. And these people, with their criminal malfeasance, have created a vacuum. Of course, from time to time, though it's been a while, some nobility emerges. And let me give you just one example. When the Daily Telegraph was offered stolen property, that property being the details of the grand larceny of public funds in the MP's expenses scandal, which revealed that hundreds of members of parliament, some of them the biggest names in the land, excluding me, of course, how disappointed were they when they discovered I wasn't on any of these lists. Some of the biggest names in the land, hundreds of members of parliament, had been stealing from the public purse in false, in some cases forged, expenses claims. The Telegraph had no compunction about publishing this stolen information, whose provenance was theft. And rightly so. They were hailed, they won journalism awards, and rightly so. Their circulation boomed, and rightly so, because what they were revealing was much more important than the original act of theft which had made these publications possible. Well, that's all that Julian Assange and Wikileaks have done. On a grander scale, they have revealed not just, important as it is, the grubby thievery of our parliamentarians. They revealed war crimes. Now look, when I'm dead, if you cut me open, the word Iraq will run through me like the word Blackpool in a stick of rock. And I am with Julian Assange until the end because of his revelation of war crimes committed in Iraq. I've told you, Mr. Blair, he's gone now. I've told you, as long as God gives me breath, I will pursue you until the ends of the earth to hold you responsible for the crimes you committed in Iraq.
Thank you.